You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
It is Detroit City of Champions, the podcast, and we are diving deep into the 1935 year, magnificent year, and the years around it in Detroit sports, and a trilogy of books written by author
Charles Avison.
Hey, Charles, thanks for coming in and hanging out. We never really planned this too in depth. We just kind of like, next week we're going to talk about the 1934 and the 1935 team in general. And so this week we were thinking it's like the Bad News Bears, right? Because it was a ragtag fugitive fleet.
Exactly.
Where's that from? Ragtag fugitive fleet.
Man, you got me on that.
Battlestar Galactica.
Okay,
all right,
no,
ragtag
anyways.
fugitive fleet. It was like a Bad News Bears. It was just an ugly mess. So today we're gonna talk about the Tigers and how they did 33, 34, and what led to 35 and that lineup. Because last week we talked about
Mickey Cochran,
and just how when he came in, he just infused and lit up this team. But and I was surprised because you said he was the manager. And what surprised me that you told me last week was that there wasn't big changes. He didn't make from the 33 team that just was a S show.
Terrible.
There wasn't like these, he came in and he was a player.
Mm-hmm.
And he
one of
had
the best catchers in all of baseball.
Yeah, he had chops. But besides him, you said there was like one other player. And
they had Charlie Garnier. That was really. Oh, I mean, as far as new guys, yeah.
Yeah, and for the most part, it was the same. It was the same dealio.
And that's what's so like really interesting about this. And that's kind of like why I, it's like we're talking about the Bad News Bears. Like, I kind of like just hearkening that name, like giving it to this episode.
Yeah.
We were even talking about like debating like whether it should attach the modern day Bad News Bears to the concept of the 34 Tigers, but I think that it really, I like the reason we did is because it puts you in the frame of reference for the type of team this was in 1934.
And we were talking about the roster. I mean, there's just I'm just the names, right?
Yeah,
you got Roxy Lawson.
Yep.
You got is it Vic? You got Vic. You got Carl Firpo. Mayberry.
Yeah, I actually have a list here of all my favorite nicknames from the
Chet.
team. I systematically actually put together a list so we didn't forget any of them.
Eldon Ocker. That's a cool old timey name.
His nickname was Big Six. I wanted to point out some of the great nicknames because it kind of shows.
Flea. There was a dude named Flea.
Flea Clifton.
Yep.
Dude, there's so many great stories behind these names. And
JoJo White, Schoolboy Rowe. Now, Schoolboy Rowe, is that a proper name or is that his nickname?
Dude, if we start talking about Schoolboy Rowe, it's about to be over. The whole show is about to be Schoolboy Rowe.
So do we have a Schoolboy Rowe episode?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like we need at least one episode to cover Schoolboy Rowe. He's one of my favorite players of all time. One of the great. I mean, he was like one of the great stars this year. But yes, it's just in a quick nutshell.
There was a dude, Marv. I was like, is there a Mary Owen? No, that's Marv.
Marvin, Marv Owen.
Well, there was a Fox.
I've got a couple other. Yeah, you got
Pete Fox. We got Matt Fox running things for us.
Yeah,
switching the cameras.
So think about it like this: you have Goose Goslin in left field, and you have
Yeah.
Pete Fox in right. So you have a goose and a fox, right? And then over the end of the 19th. This is a little bit ahead of the 1935 year, but there was a spark that set them off, and they both like hated each other in 1935. So you have a goose and a fox that hated each other.
Oh, good God!
I mean, it's just kind of ridiculous. But.
All right, so some great names, even better nicknames. Yep. So where do we want to go? What do you want to tell me about these Bad News Bears?
Yeah. So, anyways, like I said, let me just run through a few more nicknames, just to kind of cast a little bit more. So you got obviously Schoolboy Rowe, like we just mentioned. Tommy Bridges, who's like kind of had a longer nickname, the Game Rooster from Tennessee, and this is like stuff that they actually called them.
The Game, There goes Tommy Bridges, the Game Rooster from Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly. In the
heading
newspaper
up
articles,
to first base.
Yeah. So you got Gerald G. Walker, who they called the Madman from Mississippi. Gerald G. Walker
from Mississippi.
G. Walker was one of the top.
I got to do the old
guys.
I got to do the old timey voice.
Yeah, you got it
because you could just hear those announcers calling it like that.
Sure,
I love it. All right.
So you got of course Hammer and Hank Greenberg, Chief Hogsett. You mentioned Alfred Roxy Lawson. Yeah, I mean, it's like I say that. One of the great stories too is a guy named General Crowder. Yeah, it's
General
Alvin.
Crowder.
His name is Alvin Crowder. They called him General Crowder.
Okay,
and his story, like, so it kind of ties onto it. But like I say, the evoking the concept of the Bad News Bears was really this the way that this team was. And it really was a different team from the 34, even though the 34 team it was really the same bunch from 33, and it was the same bunch that became 35 as well for the most part. But there was a huge difference. The 34 team, nobody had the expectations were zero for the 1934 team. Coming off all these horrible years.
They didn't earn their nicknames yet.
Exactly. And so then 35, they were basically expected to win. So it was a whole different dynamic. That's what makes the 34 team so unique or so interesting. Is that so anyways, they come into this year and so again, you have Mickey Cochran that comes in, and then you have Goose Goslin that comes in. Those are really only the two major additions to the team. But underneath the surface, and this was so kind of interesting, is underneath the surface you have all these young guys. Hank Greenberg and Schoolboy Rowe were the two leaders of the 1932 Beaumont Exporters, which were a minor league team that won the top level minor league championship in 1932, and they were coached by a guy named Del Baker. Del Baker became the third base coach of the Tigers in 1934 and 35. So there was but there was many more players like Pete Fox and JoJo White. These guys were all played with the Beaumont Exporters at different points. They all coached under Del Baker. So there were all these young, there was these young guys that were coming up that they demonstrated glimpses of greatness at here and there. Right. But it was 34 and Mickey Cochran that came in that really just pulled all the talent out of them, and it went on to become literally every player on this team in 1934 and 35 had the best years of their career.
Okay.
And that's what's so fascinating is it just a coincidence that they all had literally that they all had the best years at the exact same time. And that's
what was in the water. What was in the water?
That's what I mean. It was an incredible thing, and So it so that's what I mean. What was, and that's what I'm saying. That's why this character in the form of Mickey Cochran is such a central figure.
Well, it sounds like
together.
It was more than just the guys on the field and the players on the roster. It sounds like the ancillary people were pretty important too.
Oh, everyone, yeah.
The base coaches and
sure.
All the other coaches as well. How deep was a coaching staff and a management staff? So Mickey was the manager.
Yeah, player
so
manager.
Was there so that's
he had Cy Perkins.
So is he like the head coach then? Is that
he's the head coach. He's
okay.
the head coach, and really back then, he was also in what's today's terms like a general manager, the one that decides on actual players to sign.
Yeah,
he's got to work in tandem with the owner, with Frank Navin.
Yeah,
to make those, because Frank's Uncle Frank's got to end up paying the bill, so he's got to he's got to know what they're signing.
Sure,
but after, so when Mickey Cochran went to sign with the Tigers, he got that trade and he went to go sign his actual deal with the team because they signed it year by year back then. So he went to go sign with the deal. So anyways, even before he really signed the deal, he was talking to Connie Mack, who was his manager in Philadelphia. And he's asking Connie Mack, what does this team need? And he's like, well, you got some young pitchers. They're okay. He's like, but he's like, one of your biggest holes is at third base with you've got nobody at third base. You literally have nobody. You need an outfielder. There's a bunch of, the team was terrible. You need all over the place, but particularly bad is third base. And particularly bad is left field. You got nobody in left field. So they signed Goose Goslin to play left field, who was viewed as an over the hill, maybe past his prime type guy. Maybe he had a year left in him.
Okay.
A decent player. And then, but they were not able to solve their third base hole going into the season. They were we got a hole at third base and there's not much we can do about it. And, but that's what's so incredible was that, they have Marv Owen, who was an MVP of this minor league season, a couple years prior. And so he had all this talent and everything, but he just never really put it together. You know what I mean? But with Mickey and Tom, here it is. The magic happens. And, that Mickey, he's like, look, man, we need you at third base. We need you to be able to play defense. We need you to be able to hit, like this. And, the fact that he's able to, he has this huge hole at third base. Connie Mack even tell him, you got nobody at third base. It's one of your biggest problems. And Mickey's like, we're going to make this guy into into a great player. It was like this, he was like the magic man. He was able to, whatever he touched, turned to to gold in these years. So
lucky for us.
Yeah, exactly. So So yeah, like I said, so some of the stories too, like so you have one of the big stories was the emergence of Hank Greenberg in 1934. So a lot of times
because he was like top of the charts here.
Oh, he's a Hall of Fame. He's one of the best players in baseball history.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when we see Hank Greenberg, associated with these stories, when you look back in history book, you see Hank Greenberg there. A lot of people don't realize that going into 1934, No, Hank Greenberg was not the Hank Greenberg that everybody knows today. And 1933 was his first year with the Tigers, and he was on the bench for most of the year. The Tigers in 1933, they underneath Bucky Harris, they'd signed a guy named Harry Davis to play first base. They spent I think it was $75,000 to sign this Harry Davis, who's like a great defensive player, but he was really not a great hitter. So they spent a bunch of money to sign this guy, and then Hank Greenberg was coming up through the minor leagues at that moment. So he comes up to Detroit, and he really doesn't have a position because they're not going to pay somebody $75,000 and put him on the bench.
Yeah.
They're going to. So Hank sat on the bench, and so he went. He stayed in game shape by playing baseball, like sandlot baseball in Belle Isle. Yeah, just to stay in game shape because he was never playing.
I love that.
Yeah, so in 33, so he actually went to Uncle Frank. He went to his office at one point in the year and was like, send me back to the minors. I want to play baseball, and I'm not getting a chance. And Frank was just like, hey, just give us a chance. We'll get you some games.
That's funny.
And,
because we said how many games they played in a season? It was
154, yeah.
154, and 35, he played 152 games.
Oh, he was a superstar. He was the MVP of baseball in 1935. Yeah, 35.
He only had 2 games he didn't play.
Yeah, he was a stud. Yeah, so that's what I mean. So going into, that's what I'm saying. That's what's so interesting is a lot of times when we look from the modern day and we look back at 34 and 35, like there's Hank Greenberg. You're like, oh, well, of course the Tigers were sweet. They had Hank Greenberg. He was like one of the best home run hitters and sluggers of all time.
Sure.
Oh, they had Charlie Gehringer. Oh, they had Schoolboy Rowe. They had these different guys. But that's what's so interesting. But if you look at it actually before the season happens, those guys were not who we look at them now.
Right.
Like Hank Greenberg, like he had just started to come off the bench at the end of 1933. And started to play well. They looked at him as the starting first baseman in 1934. But he couldn't. His defense was horrendous. The guy could not. They even say, I got quotes in the book. He couldn't even catch a pop fly. He could barely catch a pop fly. Yeah, I actually wrote it into the screenplay where to kind of demonstrate how bad he was in 34. I actually have Charlie Gehringer swinging out because Charlie Gehringer was this elite superstar second baseman. He was one of the only guys the Tigers had, before Mickey Cochran got there. And so, I actually have in the screenplay, Charlie Gehringer swinging over and catching the foul ball or the pop fly for Hank because he's this 6 foot, I think 6'3", 6'5". He's just a huge man and just really ungainly when he first comes up. And so he was showing that he could hit, but his defense was absolutely horrendous. Horrendous. He actually had a bigger mitt to try to catch balls better. They outlawed his mitt because it was so big, because he was trying to augment it.
It sounds like a cartoon.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. It ties in with this Bad News Bears concept where it was this all this the guy.
Does he have a whole bounce house on his hand?
Yeah.
What the heck is that?
But I mean, Hank Greenberg, that's a character from a Bad News Bears, a guy that's a moonshot home run hitter, but then can't play defense at all. Dropping foul balls, dropping all the things left and right. But the reason, and really the focal point I want to drift people's mind to is
you go out there and play rover. You're gonna play. That was my position.
Yeah, rover. Yeah,
when I had softball when I was in grade school.
Yeah,
Jamie, you go out there. You play rover out there. Okay, I'll be out there.
I'll be over there.
The King's kids.
Yeah.
Oh, playing in the rain, never won a game.
But I said, one of the central figures of the notion of why I even call it Bad News Bears is because if the listener out there remembers Tanner from the Bad News Bears, the shortstop. I don't know, but he's the kid that always was the biggest loudmouth, the biggest talker. He's always getting into a fight with somebody across the second base or whatever. The scrapper and all this, and that's your shortstop for the Tigers, Billy Rogel, who ended up becoming a city councilman in Detroit for many years. It was
really?
I actually written down here how long was he? 36 years a Detroit city councilman.
Wow. So that was probably through probably in the 40s.
Yeah, it was
in the
from
50s.
the 40s through all the way through the 60s or 70s.
Wow.
I mean, and then the drive leading up to the airport is actually called William Rogel Drive, named after Billy Rogel.
Huh.
But he was that brash shortstop at second base that was always talking smack. There was an incident, I had a quote in the book, there's an incident where Mickey Cochran was mad at because the keystone, that the short base, second base combination was Billy Rogel and Charlie Gehringer, like one of the greatest second base shortstop tandems in baseball history. And so there was an incident where the two of them had gotten crossed up on a play and like made a mistake, made an error or something. And Mickey Cochran was yelling out at Billy Rogel going, "What the hell is going on out there?" And Billy Rogel was like, "You shut the hell up, Mickey." He's like, "You worried about your own game. You're having enough problems behind the plate." And for anyone, from what we talked about last week with Mickey Cochran, for anyone to say something like that to Mickey, like you're taking your life into your own hands. And so that's what I'm saying. Like that's that kind of Tanner, from the Bad News Bears concept. Like that's this team. They're a bunch of nobodies. Yeah. They're a bunch of nobodies with they'd have talent within them, and it takes this magic man, Mickey Cochran, to bring it out. And that's this. They're across the board. Hank Greenberg was completely unknown before 1934. Comes out in 1934 and is one of the game's emerging like next Babe Ruth type hitter, elite home run hitter. It's like out of nowhere. Like, imagine, right now, like the Tigers are, a terrible team or whatever. And then out of nowhere, there's like the next great superstar emerges in their very first year. I mean, just that excitement of like, not only are we going to be sweet this year, but we're going to be sweet for a long time. Like we got this new superstar, Right. And so, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, really the only real players on the Tigers that were good, that the other teams would have like really, really wanted, was Charlie Gehringer at second base, who is like literally, I mean, he's probably the best second baseman of the 1930s and one of the best of all time. I mean, he was an elite superstar. He was a legitimate superstar. And then probably Tommy Bridges, who was I think he was 27 years old in 1934. And he'd pitched for a few years and he was solid, but he had never really been spectacular. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, yeah, so that's I'm saying, like, you have a couple of decent players, and in 1 year they're world beaters.
1934, they made it to the World Series. They won the pennant. They made it to the World Series, but they didn't win. 1935, they went all the way and they won. They were able to finish it up. Which was the better team?
Well, that's what I mean. It's really the same group of guys. That's what's interesting. And that's one of the interesting dynamics of this thing is that the 34 Tigers, the fact that they came out of nowhere, right? It was such a miracle concept. It was such a miracle that the excitement of the fans was like, there was the mentality of how long is this going to last for? Are they just playing good for the first month of the year? Are they just playing good for the second month of the year?
That's a long season, 154 games.
Exactly.
That's a long road to
well, that's why baseball needs to be that long because like the story, the old sort of phrase goes, like every team wins, what is it, 160 games? So like every team wins like 60 games and every team loses like 60 games and something like that. So it's like really the 40 games in the middle that are that are up in the air. So and that's the concept. So, and that's what I mean. Like, the baseball history is littered with teams that were great for the first month of the year, great for even the first 2-3 months of the year, and then folded at the end. So that's what I mean. Like, so in 34, all the fans are like, how long is this run going to last for? They're experiencing the joy of this team coming out of nowhere and just, like colorful nicknames, dominating personalities. Again, this Bad News Bears type of a feeling to this team where they're, just total upstarts. They shouldn't be where they're at. And then how long is this going to last for? And then it's like, as the weeks turned into months and the months turned into the entire summer and then the fall, and then, they're going into the pennant race, going head to head with the Yankees and beating them, and winning and staying ahead of the Yankees. I mean, that's what, it's like you can't ever truly believe until it's really coming down to the last couple of weeks. They're like, we're still in it. This is a legitimately good team. And so that's what I mean. So like once they got to the World Series and they were actually up in the World Series until they did the last game, once they were up and then they ended up losing. So now going into 35, it's a totally different mentality. Because now there's actually expectations on them.
They're the team to beat, not this Cinderella story.
Exactly,
yeah.
That's what I mean. So it's
like a Cinderella story.
So it's like a totally different. It's a totally different dynamic. You go in, like I say, the first it's like a total unknowns, and then it becomes an expectation. And then in the first half of 35, the team like basically lays an egg. The first part of the year, 1935, they were not good.
Yeah, fires out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that led to questions like, oh my God, that 34 was just a fluke year and whatever. But then they came back and, they made a comeback and romped their way all the way to the World Series.
It's really, they struggled at the beginning of the year in 35 because really of the loss of Icehouse Wilson.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm looking at the list. He played one game.
Oh, I didn't. He's played so little. I don't even know anything about him. I thought you were joking. No, seriously, I never.
So Cy Perkins and Icehouse Wilson each, it says they played one game in 34.
Yeah, that's no.
Those aren't on your radar.
That's not even on. Those aren't even on. And I even have guys that are role players in the books. That's I don't know. You might want to check the source of that article because I didn't see anything about that. There's a couple of random little guys here and there. Maybe I missed out on, but I don't remember doing much about them.
What about who else did? So Chief didn't make it to. Chief played in 34, but not 35, right?
He played in 35.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
What about Red Phillips?
He was sort of like I didn't really touch on him.
Just a handful of games. 7 games.
Yeah, but some of the guys. So like, one of the stories I do want to I actually have my list to make sure to talk about. Is this idea, like I say, all these players like Marv Owen, all of a sudden they don't need a third baseman. Like Marv Owen turns out to be like literally the best third baseman in baseball in 1934. So it's like these players come out of nowhere. And so it's just like across the board, like Schoolboy Rowe, they call him, he's the closest thing to the definition, to the word, if everybody's ever seen the movie The Natural, the idea of the natural player that's just like born for just, sports dominance, sports superiority. That was Schoolboy Rowe. Like no matter what he did, hit, pitched, he won numerous, he was like every sport he participated in high school, his team won national championship, or like not national, but state championships. Yeah. Like, he won a golf tournament. He won a state championship in golf on the same day as he won four events in a state track meet championship. Like,
and this was who?
This is Schoolboy Rowe.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, like a natural in every single capacity.
Yeah. Bono's Schoolboy Rowe.
He was the original. Yeah, he was the original. Could play every sport. He was just as good of a hitter. In fact, he was so good at hitting. Like the metrics I use for looking at baseball players, it's different than the sabermetrics. This is a whole nother show, but anyways, the metrics we have, like Schoolboy Rowe, he was such a good hitter that at least the way I evaluate talent, when you look at it is based on the production of runs rather than just batting average and stuff like this. But when you look at Schoolboy Rowe, he was so good as a hitter that I like a lot of people are like, oh, who is the best hitting pitcher of all time? Schoolboy Rowe was not only one of the best hitting pitchers of all time, but he was also just one of the best hitters in general of all time. Like he was just an incredible hitter. And so but going into 34, again, nobody really knew who he was. Right. He'd been injured a little bit in 33. In 34, he comes out and he's just like a household name, like nationally, one of the biggest stars in the country in 1934.
And they used him a lot. I mean, looking at their pictures, I mean, Schoolboy played 51 games in 34, and then Tommy Bridges, right? He was another pitcher, yes?
Yeah. Tommy Bridges,
and he only played 36.
Yeah.
Right? That's a jump from 36 to 51. I mean, that's...
Well, here's the thing is that hidden in that 51 is the fact that whenever that's what I'm saying, like Tommy Bridges was primarily a pitcher. Schoolboy Rowe was used as a hitter.
Yeah.
So they actually, like, even when he wasn't pitching, they would bring him in to play games as a hitter. That's how good he was.
Okay.
Yeah, he would come in and he was like he was their...
like a...
he was a
339.
His offense, like you can look at all the different numbers, but I mean, Schoolboy Rowe was one of the best. Just to give you an example how good of a hitter he was. Okay, there's a million different examples, but I'll give you this idea. So in 1934, one of the biggest stories in all of sports in 1934 was Schoolboy Rowe chasing the all-time wins record because he'd won 15 games in a row. 15 games. The record was 16. And so going into his 16th game against Washington, it's like national coverage of whether Schoolboy Rowe can win. He just came out of nowhere. This is his first really full season. He'd been injured a little bit in 33. So he comes in. So in 34, he's just this wonderkind, this natural, this amazing thing. And then we mentioned it last week about the courtship with Edna Skinner, where he was like national personality, like romance, because he said it on the radio. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so he's chasing his 16th win. It's like every single national, all coverage, all eyes on Schoolboy Rowe. So it goes into it goes into the Hank. So I forgot what inning. I think it was 7th or 8th inning. Hank Green. The score was 1-2. The Tigers were down a run. Hank Greenberg hits a solo home run to tie the game at 2-2. Going into the 9th inning. And so goes into the ninth inning, and there's a man on first and third, and who comes up to the plate? Schoolboy Rowe in the ninth inning, okay? And he hits a single to drive in a guy from third and wins the game with his own bat. Wins the biggest game, like national attention on him.
Oh my
pitches
God.
a complete game, pitches every inning of the game, and then he drives in the winning run with his own bat. Can you imagine? I mean, that's how good he was.
That's a carry him out on your shoulders game.
There you go.
know? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So he ties the all-time win record. He gets 16 in a row, and it's like, and he does it with his own bat. Like that's how good. I mean, that's a story. That's why that's why it's sad. And baseball's trying to get rid of the designated hitter. I just still believe is one of the worst things that ever happened to baseball because like I say, pitchers. Developing pitchers as a hitter. It was just especially there's so many stories of games that just took on whole new levels because the pitchers were not only the best, they were responsible for preventing the other team from getting runs. And they're also, hitting using their bat to win games too. They're like the biggest star on the field, especially when you got two pitchers going at it like that, so.
Or you'd say, well, a pitcher doesn't do it on his own, but Schoolboy Rowe did in that game.
He often did. Yeah.
He did in that game. But who are some of the other people that helped support him? Who are some of the other, people that you want to talk about?
Well, the other guy I wanted to talk about, I wanted to get to is General Crowder. He's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite stories. One of these type of guys, and I think he really helps to illustrate this concept of this just the magic that was in the air for this team. Was that so? General Crowder,
is he related to Boyd Crowder?
No, his name was Alvin Crowder, and they named him General Crowder after it was a World War I military, like one of the top people in the military.
All right,
his name was literally his name was General Crowder, and so they the fact that he was a pitcher and his last name was Crowder, they just started calling him General Crowder. So
he was only 34 to 36 with the Tigers.
There was barely in 36. His wife was sick, and his last hurrah was 35. And the 35 World Series I call it the General's finest hour, was in the 1935 World Series. Huh. But anyways, in 34, the situation was General Crowder in the early 30s was just one of the best pitchers in baseball. I mean, he was just one of the best pitchers in baseball, But he pitched an ungodly number of innings. If you look at how many innings pitched he had in the early 30s with Washington, you got it in your computer. It's like take a look real quick just so we can get an exact number. Like look at between 1930 and 1933. Look at 1929 through 32,
yeah,
33.
I'm trying to see.
I think there was one that was 412 innings, which
I don't know what these. Oh, IP. There you go. Innings pitched.
Yep. Yeah. What is it? Look for one. There's 410 or something like this. It was just some ungodly number.
So starting in 1930, it's 202, 234. 327.
There you go. Yep.
1932 is 327.
Well,
That's where it tops out.
Look at 1929, 28. I thought there was a 400 inning.
No.
Wasn't it?
So 244 and 28, 266.
Yeah, I mean, those are still pretty high counts. I thought there was a 400.
And then 241 in 1935.
But here's the thing: is in modern day baseball, if a pitcher pitches 200 innings, that's considered a workhorse.
Yeah.
Okay. So
he's
the
like
fact that
327.
That's what I'm saying. 327, 327 innings.
Rode him hard, put him away wet.
That's what I mean. So this is a guy that pitched a lot of innings, and so the general mentality was, in 1933, he had 34. He had just an absolutely dreadful beginning of the year with Washington. It was just absolutely terrible. And everybody was looking at him as though that he was basically washed up, that he'd thrown so many innings that they basically ruined him, and his arm was gone. He just wasn't effective anymore. And so the Senators, Washington puts him on waivers. So basically what that means when somebody player gets put on waivers is that every other team in the league gets a chance to claim him. And so they all get a chance to claim the player, but it goes in reverse order. So as far as the wins and losses. So the worst team in baseball gets the first shot at picking him up from the Washington.
Okay.
And so then it goes up the list, like all the way up to the first place team gets the last choice.
But in 34, they're basing it off at 33, right?
Well, no, 34. Well, it's actually in 34. This is midway in the year.
It's in
the middle of the year.
Standing is.
Yes, yeah. So
okay.
it's in the middle. Here's the thing: we're in the middle of the season. The Tigers are right. Their Tigers are in first place. Everything's going great. And so, but they could use an extra pitcher. They can use an extra arm. They got Schoolboy Rowe, Eld Knocker, and Tommy Bridges are going great. A few other guys too. But they need another guy. They need another arm. They need another arm to bring in. They need another pitcher. And so there's always players getting put on the waiver wires. There's always players that are getting, that are potentially grab. Anyways, so the idea was that Eldon Knocker they put him on waivers. Every single team in baseball passed on him, including the Tigers. Wow. They passed on him too. Every team passed on him. And so then Washington put him on waivers again for the second time. And once again, every team in baseball passed on him. This time, though, the Tigers, who were in first place, who actually have the last choice to pick him up, they signed him. They were the second time on waivers. They were the last team. If they would have passed on him, he would have been basically done.
Yeah.
His career is like basically over. Nobody's going to pick him up then.
Yeah.
And so anyways, the Tigers sign him.
Yeah.
And they come in his first game with the Tigers, he gets completely blown out. Just totally shelled, right? And which leads to the idea, like, why do we bring this guy in?
Yeah.
But then, Mickey, Mickey Cochran's like, at this point, for his next turn up in the rotation, it's come up again. In this case, the Tigers are playing the Yankees in the doubleheader, and the Yankees were the team that was like nipping at their heels all year. That's their main competition. And so Mickey Cochran he just basically needs an arm in there. Like they need
It's going to be a long day, fellas.
They need
Let's
him.
do something.
Yes, they need him. And so they just need somebody. And so General Crowder goes in, right, to go pitch against the Yankees. And they light him up for 5 runs. For 5 runs in the first 3 innings of the game. They light him up, right? And then Mickey comes up to him and tells him, he's like, there's like this moment where he's like, Jen, he's like, look, Jen, he called him Jen. He's like, look, Jen, you're trying to like strike everybody out. You're trying to like prove to yourself that your arm's still good and all these things. Dude, we just need outs, man. We just need outs. Just use whatever spitball, not spitball, just like whatever trash you can throw across the plate. Pitch into your spot, using your, it's not about how fast you can throw. It's not about how, whether you can strike these guys out or show how good you used to be or whatever like this. We just need you to get some outs for us. That's it. We're going to score some runs for you, right? So we just need you to just get some outs, like whatever it takes, by hook or by crook. We need some outs. You're a veteran. You know what you're doing. Let's get some outs. So anyways.
So, and Mickey was catching, right? So he's coming up going, dude, what are you throwing at me?
Yeah, look, that's what he said. He's like,
he's got the perfect view of what's going on.
Exactly. And that's when we talked about last week, the philosophy, the psychology of Mickey Cochran, where it's like with Eldon Knocker, he was like always trying to wind him up to get him mad because he saw that he pitched better when he was mad. And with Schoolboy, he treated him like this, like, oh, it's okay, School. You'll get it next time. He gets shelled, and he's like, it's okay. We'll get it next time, School.
Yeah.
And then for General Crowder, he just came up to him and he just said, he basically saw what was wrong with him and says, pitch into your spots, locating the ball, keeping the hitters off balance. That's your game. You're looks like you're trying to strike everybody out and like, prove something to everybody. Just get some outs. It doesn't even matter how many runs you give up, because we're going to score. We have the best offense in baseball. We're going to score for you. And so anyways, the Tigers come back and he holds on. And he wins that game 9-5.
Nice.
And pitches. He doesn't pitch a complete game, but he gets to, I think it was 8 1/3 inning. So he got pulled at the very, very end. But he holds on. The Tigers come back with 9 runs. And from that point on, he won the next 5 straight games.
Nice.
And the pitcher he beat that day was Lefty Gomez, who was the best pitcher in baseball in the American League at that time. And he only lost 5 games all season. And 2 of those losses were to General Crowder.
Nice.
And Crowder ended up starting the first game of the World Series as well. So you see what I'm talking about, like the magic of this year. Like you take this guy who was like on his way out, last chance, no hope. Even the first game with the Tigers, he gets blown out. And then here he is.
So he was, at that point, he was 35 years old. He was born in 1899. So he was 35 years old. And 35 back in 1934. That was like 90.
Yeah. That's what I mean, like,
so
he's a veteran. He was
he threw right, but batted left. He says he's 170 pounds, 5 feet 8 inches. So yeah.
No, but that's what I mean. Like I just love that story with General Crowder because I mean, like, how could you? I mean, what other, like, that story alone is like a baseball movie.
Yeah.
This pitcher that's on his last chance. No, you know what I mean? Like, there's like, I mean, not only is he on, it's not like he just came to the Tigers in his first game. He just, oh my God, he just turned it on. He got lit up in the first game with the Tigers, and then he got lit up halfway through his second game.
Yeah.
But he somehow found a way to just hang in there. Mickey was like, look, man, we're going to score some runs for you. We just need some outs. Just pitch your game. Stop trying to strike everybody out and do all this stuff. And, you just see right there at that interconnection with like that Mickey Cochran moment where he just, that psychology where he's like, look, Jen, settle down, man. Just pitch. We got it, And so I think that there was, that's one of the reasons that I tie into the wider baseball philosophy about the production of runs, how essential it is for every team. Why it's the number one thing that a team needs, because when you have a pitcher that knows that his team is just going to pound in the ball, like he can give up 5 runs and his team's going to score 9. Like it allows him to still relax and not have to worry about, winning the game by himself, that he can just settle in and then just, he can gamble a little bit. He can, do whatever he needs to do and he's going to win. So
he had 15 consecutive wins in 1932 with Washington.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He was a great pitcher. He was really one of the, and he's an overlooked name. A lot of times people, it's just one of those names.
He's not in the Hall of Fame?
No, he is not. No, but that's what I mean. Like that's one of these names that, needs to be in the sort of Detroit Tiger fan history Hall of Fame. Because he was even better in 1935. He was tremendous in 35. But like I say, the 34 was so just key because, again, right after, as soon as he settled in that one inning, and the Tigers won that game 9-5, he went on to win 5 more games, and it was 5 more straight games, and then he started the first game of the World Series.
Yeah,
what an incredible turnaround. He's pitching against Dizzy Dean, who Dizzy Dean in 1934 won the most outstanding athlete of the year award for the national award, the same award that Joe Louis would win in 1935. Dizzy Dean won that in 1934, which is kind of the MVP of all sports.
Right.
And Dizzy Dean won that. And here's Crowder, has been, retread, bad news bear type of a figure, facing off against Dizzy Dean in game 1 of the World Series. Oof. So that's what I mean. It's just, that's just one of my favorite stories from 34.
Who else is a lesser known standout there from the bad news bears?
Perfect. Here's a great one. G. Walker.
The All-Stars.
Well, G. Walker was one of the most in his day.
Matt, that's like G. Love and special sauce, right?
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
Well, G. Walker was
my
Joe
baby
Lewis's
had
favorite.
sauce.
G. Walker was Joe Louis's favorite player.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he was Joe Louis's favorite player, and he was many fans of that era's favorite player. He was, again, his nickname we mentioned earlier, the Madman from Mississippi.
Madman from Mississippi.
Yes.
Right.
And so anyway,
so G.
So G. Walker, this is one of the these are all characters. So G. Walker, the concept of G. Walker is he is a tremendous player. Okay. He's a tremendous player. He can do things on defense that nobody's ever seen. He can run the bases in a way that nobody's ever seen. He can steal bases, run the bases. He can hit like nobody's ever seen.
Right.
He can drive in runs in certain key moments. He can do this. He can, he comes up with the most incredibly important hit of the game and all this different stuff, right? But there was a catch. There was a huge catch. Is that not only could he do all these things that I mentioned he was the incredible. He was just as likely to do the worst things that anybody had ever seen. And I'll give you an example. He would drive in a run and get on first base, and he himself would drive in the game tying run, for instance. And and the fans are just going crazy. Gee, just drove in a run to tie the game. Now he's on first, and he is the winning run. And so the next guy is coming up to the plate, right? And he's getting there, and something catches him, distracts him, and he gets picked off. Right there, inning over. Right,
he's like, "Ooh, look at the pigeons."
One time he got thrown out during an intentional walk. They're trying to get intentionally walking a batter, and he takes off for second and gets thrown out. They're like, "What are you doing?" And so it was it was numerous. I'm talking about literally numerous examples of him. Literally 1 second he is the biggest hero, and the next second he's the biggest goat, the worst, just everybody's booing him and what are you doing, you idiot?
Ooh, piece of candy.
It was just, there's never been I've never seen in my history, story, all the stuff I've ever read about baseball history, I've never seen a player that could rise to such incredible heights 1 second and the next second be at the incredible depths. And there's a real quick, great story that involves Mickey Cochran, which is that Mickey believed that players, he gave all his players they call it the green light, which means they can be as aggressive as they want on the base pass. You can steal whenever you want, you can do whatever you can, but just be smart about it, be aggressive, whatever. Well, G. Walker took it way too far. He was always getting picked off, as I mentioned. And this one game, he was
how about you stick to the base, G?
Yeah, so it was 4 games in a row where G. Walker got picked off first base or did something stupid and got thrown out. And one time it cost the Tigers a win. And Mickey was furious. And so he has his team meeting and he says, every time somebody gets picked off first base from now on, it's a $50 fine. $50 fine. And wouldn't
That's
you know
the middle
it,
of the depression too.
so wouldn't you know it, a game or two later, guess who's on first base?
Picking his nose, getting picked off.
No, you're not gonna have Mickey Cochran is on first base.
He got picked off.
He gets picked off, and he comes back. They said the players. This is coming out of Eld Knocker's book called Sleeper Cars and Flannel Uniforms. And he says that Mickey coming towards the bench after he'd just been picked off, like either the next day or just, the 2 days after this fine. He comes back and Mickey is furious because he knows what's coming, And so he comes back to the bench and they're all sitting there all quiet, like looking at each other because they don't, they're all, and he said finally we couldn't hold it in anymore and they all just started laughing their face off. And then, then Mickey pull out $50 like, you sons of bitches, here's your $50, put it to whatever you want to do, give it, And so anyway, so that's so like I say, G Walker, this is a guy that like this is what I mean. Like you have this guy that
highs, lows,
super highs and super lows, and so like you say that like these are the type of characters that you're dealing with in this in this game, and they all blend into this into this story. They all blend in.
Who else? We got time for like a couple more guys. Is anybody else you wanted to? You got a whole crib sheet.
Yeah, I mean,
look at you with your notes.
Pick. So I'll focus on Flea Clifton.
Flea, yeah. What's Flea. Is that? Was that his real name?
Yeah. Well, no. It was I think it was Herman. God, I forgot. I call him Flea Clifton so much I almost forgot his name. I got his name.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, find it. Yeah. So, anyways, Flea Clifton was like he came out of Cincinnati. He was like this he grew up in the shadow of the Cincinnati Reds ballpark, and he was like this scrapper. He was like this little kid that I don't think he was an orphan, but he was something along those lines. He was just kind of like, he was kind of grew up on the streets, I guess you could say. Right.
Yeah. He grew up and then he went back in Cincinnati. He was born and died in Cincinnati. Yeah. Herman, you're right. Good call.
Herman, okay, good.
On the Herman, good call. Herman Earl Clifton.
Today.
Herman Earl Clifton. We like to call him the Flea.
So the Flea.
4 years in Major Baseball. Yeah. It's from 35 to 37, all with the Tigers.
Was it? He wasn't 34. He's not listening.
I said 34 to 35.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I was gonna say, my God, this story is about to be shot.
Yeah. No.
Anyway, so Flea was known. Flea was a scrapper. He was little. He was like small guy, hence the name Flea.
Okay.
But he was this, he's a total scrapper. One of those little small guys that you just don't want to mess with because it'll knock some like a David and Goliath complex, like a Napoleon type complex.
Yeah.
So anyways, he was in the minor leagues. He was playing with Hank Greenberg. I believe this is when they were. I believe it was when they're in Asheville or something. Anyways, so he's playing. He's on the same team as Hank Greenberg, and at one point, there's some kind of a argument happens between the two of them. And Flea Clifton, Hank's 6'5" or whatever, 6'4", 6'5". He's just a giant of a man.
Yeah.
And anyways, and Flea, I don't know what his size is. Maybe it's got there like 5'8".
He says 5'8". Yeah, 160 pounds.
Yeah, he's small.
160.
So anyways, Flea picks up a bat and goes after Hank Greenberg with a bat. Okay. And so he goes after him with a bat. Then he said, and then Hank Greenberg basically laughed at him, and then he said after that moment, the two of them became incredible friends.
Oh.
And so fast forward into
look at you bringing a bat to an ass kicking.
Yeah. So anyway, fast forward a little bit, and there's an incident at a game in I believe it was Cleveland. It was Cleveland. So there's an incident at this game in Cleveland where Hank Greenberg slides into third and he spikes the third baseman at third, or the third baseman. And so all the Cleveland Indian fans are just furious. They're like, hey, they're all throwing stuff at Hank Greenberg and stuff. They're just all mad at him, right? They're all swearing at him and stuff. And so anyways, Flea Clifton runs onto the field and is walking side by side with Hank as he comes off the field. And he's walking with them. And Hank is so you got this, he's his bodyguard. He's he tells Hank, don't worry, Hank, I got you. And he's walking with Hank off the field. And Hank's looking at him like, dude, it's like you have this appearance of a 5'8" little fella, as the bodyguard for a guy that's 6'5", and it's just monster of a man, Hank Greenberg. Hank said, there's a quote in the book that I got with him, and he says, Hank's like, wouldn't you know? He goes, I fully believe that if he was serious. He goes, He goes, if anybody had actually tried to do anything to me on that moment, he goes, Flea would have just torn their ears off. Like he was like, and then, they were just best friends. They were
Hank
like
was
tremendous
6'2".
friends. Oh, 6'2". Okay. Good,
That's a big, 6'2", 210 pounds. That's a big dude for 1935.
Yeah. And Schoolboy Rowe was, I think, 6'4". Schoolboy Rowe was a couple inches taller than Hank. I got a picture in the books where the two of them are standing back to back, and like Schoolboy's actually taller than Hank. You're like, geez. But anyways, it was just great because, like I say, Flea, and then one of the interesting components of that relationship, that friendship, was that in the 1935 World Series, Hank broke his wrist in the second game of the World Series in 1935. So the Tigers didn't even have their MVP, the American League MVP, their best player, in the World Series with them. And so when they needed a replacement, they were trying to figure out who their replacement should be. And Flea was like, they call it a utility player who played like basically every position, and he only came in when they needed just a temporary, fielder for a game or here and there. And so anyways, and so in that moment, this is one of the only times I've ever seen that the owner of a team stepped in, because there's everybody's trying to figure out who should play where, because Hank Greenberg's gone, how they're going to place Hank Greenberg. And there's like all these different suggestions, and Frank Navin comes in and says, Flea's going in. Flea is going to the game. They're all like, Flea? He can't hit at all.
He's got heart.
He's
got heart.
Yeah, basically,
like replacement players. It's got heart.
Yeah.
We need heart.
Yeah, so I speculate. I spent a lot of time in the book actually trying to explore the method behind that decision.
Yeah.
For Frank Navin, like what would motivate him to do it. And I basically come up with the idea that it was defense, that it was like they'd rather like shore up their defense at that moment than their offense was great already. So anyways, so Frank Navin ordered basically Flea Clifton into the game. And so he was like, he's going to be our guy for the rest of the series. So anyways, so Marv Owen went to first base and Flea Clifton went to third. So it was like, so basically Flea, it's just kind of, I just think it's kind of a cool touch to that story, that friendship with Hank Greenberg, that he is the one that kind of replaced Hank Greenberg in the, in the World Series, to end it in that. So, but yeah, so Flea, like, he's just one of those guys, like, he's, I've got some great pictures and stuff with him in the books too. He was another player. So,
yeah.
Yep. So yeah, you could, like I say, go on and on, man. I mean, it's.
How long we been rolling, Matt?
You guys are sitting at about, your listeners have been graciously listening to you for the last 46 minutes.
Cool.
So.
One more story?
Yeah, oh no, yeah.
One more story.
Just
Heine
dude,
Schubel.
we can
go as long as we want.
The internet is long.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Like,
the internet is long and deep, man.
I haven't found the bottom of the internet yet.
We got more beers in the fridge.
Okay, yeah.
All right, no, but one more. What do we got?
Okay, Heine Schubel.
1, 2.
All right.
Okay.
Heine Schubel.
All right.
So Heine
Schubel.
Yeah,
look
at his stats.
That's a tough childhood.
That's
I want
unfortunate.
I want you to take a look at his stats and tell me what you see.
Heine Schubel. Oh, there he is. Heine Schubel. That is a rough childhood right there.
But look and see if you can find any kind of stats or numbers on the guy.
All right. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at. Batting average just around 250.
But like, how many games did he play?
And games like 11.
Exactly. He was like never.
33 played 49.
Yeah, but what about 34 and 35?
Like 11 games each year.
Yeah, nothing. He was never. He'd like never played.
Heine Schubel. All right.
So he never played. That's like kind of the component of this guy's story. So Heine Schubel, he was a guy. This is a guy that the Tigers had, like, early on. I think it was 31 or 32 was when the Tigers signed him. Mm-hmm. And when they first got him, they thought he was the next big thing. Well, okay, they signed him for, and I think it was $40,000 that they signed him for. Or maybe I think it was $35,000. I think I'm 99% sure it was $35,000.
Okay.
So, anyways, which is it's a sizable investment. So anyways, Heine comes in and he's just terrible. He's just really not that great. I mean, he's not, I wouldn't say he was a horrible player, but I don't think he just wasn't like, right. He wasn't a starter, and they just, he was just a bench guy. So they basically kind of carried him for a few years because they're seeing it, they're holding out hope that maybe he can turn it around and be this guy that they thought when they signed him. Yeah. But what they found along the way was something that is arguably just as important. And it made Heine Schubel incredibly valuable. All right. Heine is one of the greatest bench jockeys of all time. Heine Schubel is one of the greatest bench jockeys. And what that is, if you're ever watching a movie especially an old baseball movie, you hear somebody from the dugout just going, "Hey, you suck." Like somebody that's, these players in the dugout that are harassing other players. Yeah. They're harassing fans. They're just talking all kinds of shit to these people.
Yeah.
Like it's a bench jockey, somebody that rides other players, they're quick-witted, they're loud-mouthed. They have like a big, in Heine Schubel's case, he has this big toothy grin where he's like smiling at people. He's just an obnoxious jerk, really, like that to other fans and players, which is like, you want one of those, every team's got to have a bench jockey.
Sure.
You got to have one guy who's a freaking big mouth and who's like, that's like Heine Schubel went after Babe Ruth. Heine Schubel, he goes going after fans. There's like all these articles in there where he's going after fans. And I got this great photo in the book that what it is Heine Schubel like never got his picture in the paper. He's always the guy, they call him the best water cooler player because they're trying to, they couldn't get quotes from Hank Green. Usually a player, when you interview them, especially nowadays, listen to whatever interviews a player gives. They go, what do you think about today's game? And they're like, we did our best. We tried our best. Oh my God. We do our best to win. It's all canned answers a lot of times.
It's what's that baseball movie? They practice at Costner.
Exactly.
They practice that on the bus. We got to practice our platitudes.
Bull Durham.
Yeah, we got to practice our cliches.
Practice our cliches. That's a great scene.
I do that with my journalism kids. I'm like, I show that to them. There's a couple of F-bombs.
Yeah, we showed a lot of heart.
We got to practice our. We gave it our best.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying.
We doing it for the team.
Yeah. So those are the type of guys that that's what everybody says.
But
Heine was the guy you went to if you wanted the real score, the real story. They called him the water cooler guy. Yeah. Because you find Heine Schubel by the water, you're like, hey, Heine, what you got for us? He's like, I got all kinds of stuff to tell you. He's going to tell you whatever you want to hear. And
his laces were untied the whole game.
And so but I have a great photo in the book because Heine, like, every single day it's like Tiger Mania. So it's like pictures of Hank Greenberg, pictures of Charlie Gehringer's house, pictures of like them walking down the street. You know what I mean? Pictures of them doing everything and anything. And Heine never got his picture in the newspaper. Barely anybody really knew who he was.
11 games. Come on. Yeah.
So anyways, Heine, I forget if this is 34 or 35, but Heine, he'd been telling the Detroit Times for like time after time after time, like, hey, why can, he's basically joking and whatever. He's like, when can I get my picture in the newspaper? I want to let at least people know that I'm on the team.
You quote me all the time.
Yeah.
How about you give a fellow
throw me a bone.
Give me a 5x7.
Get a bat in my hand, like this. And so at least let me look like I'm on the team, Get one picture. Is that going to really hurt you?
Give me batting practice. You give me batting practice. Come on.
But he's trying to get in the paper with his picture. He wanted to make it look like he was a heroic Tiger in the picture. Yeah. So he was always telling him, like, when are you going to slot me into the paper? It's not going to hurt anything to give me one picture. So he was always trying to get them to do this. Anyways, I have a photo in here. Like I say, maybe we can put this up for the viewers or whatever. But anyways, the picture actually says in the caption, here you go, Heine, in the caption of the photo. They're like talking, like a message to him. They're like, Heine's always telling us that we never put him in the paper. So here it is. They actually say that in the paper. Like, brilliant. And it's Heine's standing there with this bat on his shoulder, like he's like this like major contributor guy, like heroic pose. He's like this. Yeah. And he's like, they're going, here you go, Heine. Like it actually says it in the quote. But I guess that ties into the concept of this team. You know what I mean? The engagement of the fans. Like you open your newspaper up and what would you see that now? Would you see that now with where there's a banter between the newspapers and the team and the players, where there's a connection between the fans, where they look at the paper and they say like, here you go, Heine, and the fans are going, oh, that's hilarious, dude. Heine never gets his picture. So they're like connected with the team. It's like there's this like, this connection is like that draws you in to these people.
It sounds like a fun time in the city. Yeah. Really, it does. Yeah. We're actually going to have an opening day coming up here in Detroit, July 27th. They're talking about this 2020 crazy 2020 year and shortened season, and but they're gonna try to do a season. It's still a long way between now and then who knows if it'll actually happen. But it's just the excitement that sports can bring. And just the city was on fire there at 34. That's anybody else? Is there anybody else that we don't want to overlook? Anybody?
The thing is, I'm trying to, some of the stuff I want to save to 35 because some have some more, more relevant 35 stories, but there's, like I say, it's, it's just,
what I liked you shared the first time you said you have like an appendage and it's like the stories of a writer's search or something. You said you have some like stories of like your search, right?
Like I call it Tales of a Traveling Storyteller. Yeah, that's
Tales of a Traveling Storyteller. What's another story out of one of those tales of a traveling storyteller? What's another one of the ones that?
I can talk about the one. The one that precedes the Tigers chapter. It kind of dives into the whole baseball analytics thing. I kind of reference, and it's actually I think kind of important, like you said, to mention here. which is the story of me meeting a man named Chris C.T. Bartlett.
Okay.
And it was I was up in Oscoda. It was my first year on the road selling books, and it was on this beach. It was an art show on the beach, and like you meet all kinds of crazy people, man. When you're selling books, you're especially talking sports. You get people coming. I had a guy coming up one time telling me that Joe Louis winning the championship was a conspiracy, that he never won it. I'm like,
good
God. You hear the craziest stuff. But anyway, so this guy comes up to me, okay, and he comes up to me and he's got like a sleeveless shirt. He's like in his maybe in his late 50s, and he's walking with a golf club as a cane. Right, he's using a golf club as a cane. Okay, and this guy, he's got like dark, smoky sunglasses on. Like this guy has got eccentricity, like radiating from him. Okay, like this aura of eccentricity. And so and he comes up and we just start talking. I'm just talking to him, and he's in our conversation at one point shifted because here I am talking about like I discovered this incredible season. I'm trying to sell these books. At the time, I only had the first book, and our conversation shifted because I mentioned the fact, and this is a great little end around back to this fact that the 1934 Tigers, the infield of the 1934 Tigers, had set the all-time record for most runs produced in a season. They'd driven in the most runs. And so, and I said, still to this day, that no other infield, you're talking about Marv Owen, Billy Rogel, Charlie Gehringer, and Hank Greenberg. No other infield in baseball history has eclipsed their total. And that's when they played 154 games. Even with 162, they still haven't surpassed it. Wow. Not to my knowledge, at least not in the last few years.
Wow.
But anyways, so I mentioned this fact to him, and he says, like, what do you know about, like, the production of runs? And I'm like, I know that it's pretty important, to win a game. And he says, you have no idea how right you are. And so he proceeds to tell me that he was like, he's like, well, just like you discovered this story and you're trying to promote the story, he's like, I discovered this analytics thing, this baseball analytics concept. And he's like, basically you could call it Moneyball 2. Like Moneyball 1 was this big analytics thing that changed baseball. They opened up the door to this thing called sabermetrics, which is like a scientific study of baseball and such. But he was like, I changed baseball forever. I have the greatest discovery in baseball history, like analytics wise. Like I can build baseball teams better than anybody else. And I'm like, this is like kind of crazy. Like, again, like why are we starting to drift into crazy town territory? And anyways, he tells me, he says, I'll be back later. I told him, I said, I'm really busy. Do you have anything I can read? Do you have anything I can take a look at? And so he was like, yeah, I'll be back later. I'll come back later. And so he does. Later on in the day, he gives me he comes back with this old periodical. It's like this paper-bound periodical from like 1982, hand stapled and everything. Impressive looking work, but it was, just from like 1982. And he comes back to me, I put it in a little plastic sleeve and take it home with me. And so I get home that night, I'm like, what the hell? I'll give it a read, right? And so by the time I was done reading this thing, I was like, not only did I take it out of the plastic sleeve, but I was like putting it in like a glass case.
Oh my.
Because it was this guy, as eccentric as he was and as outlandish as his claim may have been. Yeah. This guy had changed baseball forever. But the problem is nobody knows about it. Nobody knew who he was. He had no mouthpiece. He had all these weird, like, these health problems. So he was always sick. He could never promote his work the way that he should have. And so the very next day I was on the phone with him. I called him up and I was like, "Oh my God, you blew my mind. This is the most." I'd already written a book with baseball, history and analytics and stuff in it. And I was just like, I told him, I said, "This is the greatest discovery. I mean, everything I thought I knew about baseball has changed. Everything." And he was like, he just told me, he was like, yeah, I said, how come baseball doesn't have this? How come you haven't, the world hasn't been changed with this? And he says, well, how come nobody knows about the City of Champions thing? Like, how come, why haven't you been able to change the world's mind with your City of Champions thing and get the story of this out? And it was a great point. Like, basically, he and I were on the same situation. Like, we both had like a discovery or something we both considered, that was potentially a big thing. And, really, what he taught me, he'd been dealing with the situation I was in was that I couldn't get any, mainstream newspaper attention. And it really was the same situation for him, but he'd been dealing with this since like 1982, 83. He'd been going through this for like 40 years. He'd been going through this. And so what he brought to that table for me at that moment was this idea that it wasn't like, this wasn't me just like looking at something and saying, making a mountain out of a molehill, like saying like, how come nobody is interested in this? Like people be like, well, because it happened so long ago. It's just you. It's just you who's interested in this project. You know what I mean? It's like, maybe it's not a big deal to everybody else. You shouldn't get so excited about it. But he was the one that was telling me like, it is a big deal. Yeah. And the problem is not you. The problem is the fact that you're trying to reach out to people that are so basically set in a mindset that they just, they exist in their own, like you can't just go, they have an incredible difficulty of just thinking outside the box and like recognizing, an idea or something new when it comes in front of them. And so that was the idea. So his name was Chris C.T. Bartlett, and we became incredible friends. Yeah. He taught me everything he knew about his analytics thing. I even added my own weight to it. And I actually introduced the concept in that second book, that Tales of a Traveling Storyteller, and used some of his stuff to evaluate the players.
Cool. And you can find those. We got Detroit City of Champions is a trilogy of books. DetroitCityOfChampions.com is the website. Yep. And there's so many players, but we're going to do individual episodes on some of these these big dogs. Yeah. And then just so much to talk about, because their 1935, the Lions, the Red Wings, the Tigers all win their first championships. And then there's 33 total championships. Garwood, Walter Hagen, there's track, there's field, there's skeet shooting. Sport. And we're going to get to hockey, the junior hockey, and we're going to get to them all. If you want to dive into it, and again, it's just not a big infomercial for the books, but you did put a lot of hard work in.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid.
Yeah. Do you sell? Is it a constant flow? I mean, because
it's my primary business. Yeah,
is it you just sell the book?
Yeah,
and because it's not timely, right? It's not like it's
no. One of the things I've discovered about like the book sale, like initially when I first started, I was like, I was trying to hit the sports sections. I was trying to like get into like, I was trying to sell books like to like fans. You know what I mean? Like, I would go to like the Gibraltar. I was like selling books. To like at baseball card shows. I've tried every single place. You name it, a venue. I've been there selling books. A lot of people that might be listening to this have probably met me. I've told this story. I mean, I've been everywhere. I've bathed in every Great Lake in the same summer, selling books at every art show you can think of. But, this is my primary thing. I was gonna say, I started off trying to sell to like sports fans, but I quickly realized that really the best way to sell books is not just to target the person you're trying to get them to read, but to basically to sell them as gifts.
Right. Right.
Like sell them to somebody that's going to buy the gift for the sports fan, not necessarily for them, So, and so that's kind of the market that I'm in. And so I do so that's why the art shows are great, because it's like, a lot of, gift shows, handmade gift show type things. And so I'm in a lot of these stores.
And you see that, you go, I know who would love this.
Yeah.
And you probably know somebody who would love this story if you stuck around this long. We appreciate everybody who's hanging out.
Yeah, you can actually find
listening.
the books. There's besides the website, you can actually have a look at them if you go to Partridge Creek Mall in Clinton Township, or 12 Oaks Mall in Novi, or Laurel Park Mall in Livonia. There's a Michigan art store there called Inspire Marketplace. And I have the books all in there. So every once in a while you find me in there. Man, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If somebody comes in and starts talking about baseball or City of Champions or anything, even it could be just like some little old lady that's just got nothing else to do with come in there and go, oh, these books are cool. And I'll be like, all right, well, you want to hear about 1935?
Let me tell you a little something.
Yeah, like spend half my day talking about this, So I still love the subject, even, after 10 years, it's still, I love it still. So
that's cool. Well, we're gonna unfold them, and I love hearing you tell the stories, because it's like this is so much better than a book on tape, because it's you getting excited about the different parts that are exciting, and then me saying ridiculous crap in between. I hope you don't mind.
I enjoy the concept though, because telling it's like, because originally I was thinking about how we're gonna do the format, should we have like pre-assembled questions or whatever, but. No, I just like the idea, because I just like the concept of you and I just talking about it, because what I'm trying to, the story and the things I'm trying to lay out, it might not necessarily be, you're asking the questions that maybe the listeners are asking too, and I think that's good, instead of me just trying to sit here and pound the story home and be like, everybody hear this is the way it is, listen to this, but you're actually hitting it with the questions that are.
Today I pulled some information off of VintageDetroit.com is where I was pulling some of my info. Some stats and stuff. Pretty cool little website there.
No, it's a great. Absolutely, I recommend that site. Yeah. I love that site. Yeah.
And your site, DetroitCityOfChampions.com. I'm DJJamieDetroit.com, and on all the socials. Matt Fox.
Yes, sir.
We love Matt Fox.
Yeah, he's
I'm just sitting back and learning,
clicking all the buttons.
I have
for us.
no.
Yeah, he's
I have,
like doing like the DJ back there, like spinning the switches and all this
but
stuff.
I have
back
no
there.
idea about the 34-35 Tigers.
Yeah.
So all this information is just
That's what,
blowing my
that's what I'm saying.
mind.
Like even if you're really not even a Detroit sports fan, I just think that it's just a great baseball story.
I love the history.
regardless.
And I love history
Yep.
and just these these great names.
Yeah.
Fucking Flea.
Flea. Schoolboy. Man. Wait till we get to
I thought
Schoolboy.
Flea was a bass player for Red Hot Chili
Yeah,
Peppers.
okay. He might have been named after him.
Right,
From
right.
and legend has it that that Mickey Mantle, if you're familiar with the name Mickey Mantle,
Yeah.
that he was named after Mickey Cochran. That's the room. That's the story that I've heard.
All right.
That his dad was listening to a game or whatever and was like, "Oh, Mickey Cochran." Or that he was like a great fan.
That's
of
a
Mickey,
good baseball
that he was,
name.
Well, that his dad was like a huge fan of Mickey Cochran.
That's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
Got more research to do. All right. So, Detroit, City of Champions. Next time, I don't even know what we were talking about. It's going to be more great stuff next time.
I think next time we're talking about, actually, I think we're going into the 35 Tigers. So it's going to be sort of an extension of what I think that's what we're talking about. We can talk about, I think we might be talking about the fans. I've got some great stories about the fans.
Oh my gosh.
Which shows a lot about, that's one of the things that I was trying to talk a lot about the players now.
12th man or whatever.
Yeah, but more about the excitement of these players. I've got some of the greatest, some of these articles that I've collected about the fan excitement of just what these fans, just how excited they got in these crazy stories of like just fans, like the behavior of the fans of just trying to get into games, like the stuff that happened after games, like the things that they would go through in order to get tickets. I've got some great stories. So I think we're gonna for that next episode. I think we're gonna be talking about the 35 Tigers, but I think we want to try maybe tie some of the fan stuff in with it. I think
that's all right, cool.
Yep.
So Detroit, City of Champions, the podcast. Thanks for being with us, and we'll do it again.
All right.